we are live.
We are live. Welcome, everybody. We certainly are. I can see the streams now. Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is Friday. I think it's the 4th of March
Or is.
today. In case we haven't met, my name is Yanni Burmeister. To my left, your right, is Richard Lellies. We are head coaches for Unity Gym and the Unify Movement System, where we turn driven people just like you into strong, flexible, fit athletes. We're famous for our athletic transformation program. And today we are talking about something very, very important. We had a great discussion yesterday on our UMS coaching group about training intensity. And actually, this one came from Wednesday when we had Dr. Phil on the show, our resident physiotherapist. And it's a really important topic. Now, before we dive into it, let's welcome everybody in the Movement Mastermind Facebook group. I can see we've got Dave Clark there. If you are on the live, let us know and we'll send you back some love. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, smash up that like button. It does help us. It helps the channel. And why wouldn't you want to do that? I can see we've got Ricky Webster in already doing so. Saying greetings, fellas, from Birmingham, Alabama. Love your work, Ricky. Everyone on the live, Vinny Brown, good morning. Let us know who you are, where you're tuning in from. And let's get started. So why don't we just flick that clip from the coaching group on Wednesday, Richard, and then we'll dissect this and go deeper.
Yeah.
Fair bit of weight shifting and a fair bit of knee shifting. So it indicates that your Josh is absolutely on the limit here. Like the weight, this load is too heavy, and there's two ways that I can see that. One, and the most obvious, is that the first rep should look like the last rep should look like the first rep when you're doing a really complex movement like the squat or deadlift. There's just so much room for injury in these movements when you go beyond your capability that you just don't want. You don't want to bank any ugly reps. It's just not worth it, And I'll say that to everybody. This is a lesson that I've had to learn the hard way. You need to bank more reps. You need to develop the skill. Strength is skill, and that often is just the case. But while you're doing that, I don't recommend. This is why we say technique optimization comes first, and there's a good 3 phases, 12 weeks of technique optimization, because we don't want you introducing overload variables until you've really got the technique optimized in these fundamental movements. I've seen quite a few of you doing reps that you're really on the edge. You're on the edge of really losing form at the expense of trying to lift 10 or 20 kilos too heavy. You should really only ever do that once or twice a year. When power lifters do it, it's at competition, and they'll go to their limit at competition. But even the good guys, even the real good guys, it'll still look pretty good. They might the movement might slow down a bit, but the form and technique will still look the same as when they're in training. And that's how you progress and make strength. It's about turning up, doing the work in the orange zone. And this goes for everybody. There's this band of training intensity, and there's the red zone, and there's the green zone, and there's the orange zone in the middle. And we train in the orange zone. You don't ever train in the red zone. The red zone is like losing form, busting a gut, your eyeballs bloodshot after the last rep and that sort of thing. But I see it so often. I see a number of people constantly trying to train in the red zone. And it's just not worth it. It's not. You don't get results in the red zone. You get injured in the red zone. You create problems for yourself in the red zone.
Yeah.
And training.
You want to make
smart,
your training consistent.
Yeah, training smart is about turning up and training in the orange zone, day in, day out. There's no shortcuts. That is like.
All right. Let's set in that little 3-minute clip. I think we covered a lot of great points on that. Yeah.
So this is really important. And first off, this is what we do daily. Straight after this show, you know, the majority of our coaching every day, except for Wednesday, usually is a little bit more along the lines of injury rehab because we do have Phil White on the show, and uh, Friday is often a little bit more about a nutrition talk. We go deeper into our nutrition program and protocols, but every other day we're analyzing videos that our tribe put up, you know, and we often, you know, this is something that we work on very specifically in the beginning phases of our program. The 12 month athletic transformation program is 12 4-week phases. The first three being what we call the technique optimization phase. And in some circumstances, we have a foundations program that we will prescribe someone, which is three earlier phases where we work more unilaterally. So I think single leg, single arm movements to balance the body out a little bit more. But most of the time, people come through the technique optimization phase first. And the reason why we do that is because you know, there's this concept of practice makes perfect, but it's not true with strength training. Strength in itself and flexibility in itself is a skill. And to develop any skill, practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. Only perfect practice makes perfect. I'm going to say that twice because it's very important that people understand. And the reason is because every time we drill a movement pattern, whether it be a good movement pattern or a false or a bad movement pattern, we're reinforcing to the central nervous system. We're actually building, uh, increasing fatty tissue around the brain's neurons, which strengthen the connection between brain and muscle, and ultimately thought and movement. And so you can sort of see how if we're constantly strengthening a false movement pattern, not only are we putting our body at a little bit more risk of injury, but we're also putting our body at, we're reinforcing and strengthening a faulty movement pattern. And you're not going to do 10,000 faulty movement patterns and then result in doing a good movement pattern. It just doesn't work that way. And we sort of say that you can get away with that in many types of training, and this is why the gym movement shifted to sort of assisted machines, because it kind of removes a lot of the gray area where you just push an apparatus back and forward, or move something in one plane of movement, and it's easier for the brain to get around. But unfortunately, we now know decades and decades later down the track that actually detrains these important stability systems in the body and creates a whole lot of other problems, you know, and that strength that you develop in that one very dysfunctional plane of movement doesn't necessarily carry over into the real world, because when we need to apply that strength in the real world, we don't have those fulcrum points controlling the movement and stabilizing us, you know, which you can obviously see that would not be very functional in the real world if you actually need your strength, you know, outside of the gym, which is why we train. So um, it's really important that people understand this, and so we often find, like we did on Wednesday, that we have to kind of slow people down, because when we turn up, strength training is very, unfortunately, or fortunately, maybe it probably works both in our favor and against us. It's very ego driven. You know, we want to be able to lift and we want things to happen quickly. We want to gain strength quickly. We want to increase our muscle mass quickly. And that's totally fine. Unfortunately, it seldom matches up to the way the body adapts on a physiological level. And this is particularly true in an untrained individual who's, you know, I would call an untrained individual, believe it or not, someone in their first 5 years of strength training. You like, it really takes a fair while to bank enough reps to become really proficient at the complex movement patterns like the squat, you know. And so what we often find, Richard and I, when we're coaching people, that we have to remind people that it's not a good idea to be training in what we would refer to as the red zone, which is where you're really on the edge of out of control. You're really struggling to maintain good form and technique, and you're really um, you know, risking injury and other problems that come with that. And unfortunately, for a beginner, the spectrum. If we were to create a spectrum, and you've got a green zone, which is at the start, which is very easy, hardly challenging. Then you've got what we would refer to as the orange zone, which is the sweet spot where you're sufficiently challenged, you're sufficiently stimulated to grow muscle, to gain strength, but you're not going to break form, and you're probably not going to go to failure and conk out halfway through a rep. And then you got the red zone, which is beyond that, where you're really struggling, on the edge of out of control. Your knees are buckling, your body's trembling, and you're likely to break form, and there's a high risk of injury there. When you start, the green zone is quite small, the orange zone is tiny, and the red zone is huge. Like most of the weights that you pick up are going to put you in the red zone. Most of the exercises, due to their complexity and the need for coordination, they're going to put you in the red zone. And so you've got to be really careful. And that's where it's really important to have guidance and have someone looking at you and checking your form and technique and things like that. And as you increase in experience, the green zone gets much bigger, the red zone starts to diminish and get much smaller, and the orange zone gets a little bit bigger as well. So a lot of things feel really easy. It's harder to challenge yourself, and you've got to really work hard to take yourself to failure. You've got to lift really heavy weights in a very complex movement pattern, like a clean and jerk, an Olympic snatch, a very heavy back squat, bench press, overhead press. You start to find it, advantageous to put movements like muscle ups and handstand push ups in your workouts, because conventional pressing and pulling movement patterns become quite easy, and in some cases sort of boring. And so you can see here that in that beginning phase, that's when we want it the fastest, because we've got the biggest journey ahead of us. But it's the most likely that we're going to be putting ourselves in that red zone. And it's the reason why it's so important to get a little bit of coaching and guidance at that point. What do you think, Richie?
Yeah, I think it's such an important concept to grasp for everybody training. One of the first things that you should really be taught about how to train is, when you should be pushing it and when you should be not pushing it. It's one of those things where if you don't learn it, you can end up injured quite quickly, or just going through training and not getting very good results at all. And injury is going to be part of that. But yeah, I don't know what it is. I think it's maybe our internal psychology about getting results, getting to the end, having immediate gratification, or maybe it's like drilled into us from an early age with social media and what's on TV about losing this amount of weight in this amount of time, or just showing the end result of everybody's journey and not actually paying attention to the work done before that. Like when you think of an athlete, like people aspire to be like this great basketballer, great athlete on the track, and they think about their times that they've ran, the victories and everything. But I don't think a lot of people take into consideration or know the details of what led up to that point. So it's the meticulous hours of training smart, but as well as hard, that got them there. And that's a key as well. You want to train smart when you're training. You don't want to train just hard. You want to train smart with the combination of intensity. But by training smart, you need to know how to do the things properly before you hit that intensity. Otherwise, yeah, like we just said, you crash and burn. You don't get the results you want, and you end up injured. And it's really important. One of the most important concepts, I think, for everyone starting out training. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Vinny Brown's got a really great question down over in the Movement Mastermind Facebook group. He's saying, can you clarify the difference between training in the red zone, as you said, and going for it, as in during a peak week? Okay, so I would only ever say that you should be in the red zone when you're competing for something. So if you're competing in a sport, you will go into the red zone. It's very difficult not to. And at professional level, they monitor all of your biometrics, nowadays with wearables to manage how much the athletes are in the red zone, because it's when you're in the red zone, irrespective of how well trained you are, you're at extremely high risk of injury. And for a professional outfit, if a player is the players are their assets, if a player is injured, it costs them a lot of money. So they want to avoid that at all costs. For you and me, Vinny, who don't have these incredible wearables, I mean, there's a lot of apps that you can use. HRV for sport for training is a great app that you can install on your smartphone. I wear a wearable all day long that helps. I've also had an Aura ring and things like that, so that we can get a little bit of feedback and understand. But what I would say is, remember that I just explained there's a spectrum. And if for visual, you can imagine a bar that is colored from green to red. And in the middle, there's an orange section. And the orange section's not necessarily going to be all the same color orange. It's going to blend into red at the end there. But so you can train at a high capacity. And what we say, the way we create this bar in a mathematical sense is training at your max, repetition max. And for certain goals and for certain experience levels, you have a repetition max that you want to sort of train at. And we say between 70 and 80% of your one rep max is a good repetition max for an experienced, well-trained individual. Okay. And then it starts to, we manipulate this a little bit. It gets a little bit complex. We don't have time to go deep into that, but we use different rep ranges for inexperienced or untrained individuals. Okay, so we use a 6 rep max for the average person. For an elite level athlete, we use a 1 rep maximum. And I would say even in peak week, you don't want to be in the red zone. The red zone is, breaking form. Like we very rarely allow you guys to break form. And the more experience you get, and the reason I say that the gauge is very different for a beginner. Some of the guys that we showed the videos there, it's not necessarily that they're lifting super heavy weight, and that's why they're sort of buckling their form. It's because they're that we would call them an untrained beginner state. And an
Yep.
untrained beginner is usually anywhere up to the 1 or 2 year mark, training consistently 4 or 5 days a week for 1 or 2 years. You're still an untrained beginner when you really analyze compared to an elite level athlete.
Yep.
Richard and myself are not considered elite level athletes. We've been training consistently for almost 20 years, in the gym.
Yep.
But when you compare it to an elite level gymnast or something like that, they make us look like, or even a power lifter or an Olympic weightlifter, they make us look pathetic, because
Yep.
we haven't trained under that supervision consistently in the one discipline for a certain amount of time.
You can still
So
train
yeah, look,
hard. You can still push yourself and not be in the red zone. Like going
absolutely.
for it and the red zone are a little bit different. Like going for it is still potentially training at the further end of the orange zone, but not ever entering the red, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Like the red zone really, red zone's different for everybody. The red zone, like Yanni said the other day, for like an elderly person, she can red line it, she can red zone it just by trying to step up off the chair, because for her, that's such a monumental feat. But for a well trained individual, the red zone probably looks a lot smaller, and they're less likely to get into the red zone because they're so well trained. Their form, their technique is so well dialed that even when they push themselves to a high 90% of potential, they never really get to that point where they're just like about to break form. Yeah, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
that's exactly right. The red zone and the orange zone and the green zone, they're different for everybody based on your age, injuries, the injury. We call it the issue intensity spectrum. Is something that we apply when someone's got an issue in their body, and that changes these variables dramatically. If you're compromised in somewhere in your body, then your red zone is huge compared to other people. So
Yep.
many things will put you in the red zone really quickly. And if you're a beginner, your red zone is huge. So you got to understand that this is why it's important to work with and just create a circle around you of influence that understands this stuff, that can give you this feedback. You
Yep.
guys who are watching here, you're lucky because you already are. You know, you're on our YouTube channel. You're probably likely frequenting other professionals or experts' YouTube channels. People like Vinny, Jody, Dave, they're in our Movement Mastermind group. And I urge everybody on the YouTube channel to jump over into the Movement Mastermind group. It's a free group. You get access to our free 20-minute flexibility routine, which is arguably our most successful routine. We used to charge for it, and now we give it away for free. And we give you our warm ups too, which is so important for working out. You need to understand how to warm up the body effectively. And you get access to our 5-day flexibility challenge, which is really strength and flexibility. We talk about how to bring those two elements together into an efficient workout. And that's a live workshop that we do a couple of times a month, and you'll work with Rad on that. So advise you guys to do that. Now we have to jump over, and we got Nutrition Friday today going on in the coaching group. We've got to prepare for that, and yeah, we're going to be analyzing people's diets and helping them build their meal plans and their diets to maximize muscle protein synthesis and get the right calorie balance, which is so important for people. Anyway, guys, it's been a really fun week out here in the Movement Mastermind group and also the YouTube channel. I just want to urge everybody, we do have a 5-day flexibility challenge starting on Monday, which will be Sunday, US. I think it starts around the evening of 5 o'clock in the USA. I know East Coast, West Coast is different by about 3 hours. I can't give you exact times. You have to jump into the group and ask. But it kicks off Monday here in Australia, Sunday for the US, and it's going to be an awesome one. I know that we've got about 40 people already in there, and in future we're actually capping these at 20 people because it just raises the bar in how much we can interact with everyone. They're run on Zoom, so it's an interactive experience, and you will get the 5-day flexibility routine to work on every day. And what we want to do is give every single person a massive breakthrough in their physical performance during that 5-day period. And so far, we've done very well to do so. So get yourself over there. The first step is you've got to be part of the UMS Movement Mastermind group. Just quickly checking any other questions. I saw that we had Ricky Webster has asked us, what are your guys' present body fat percentage, and what is your range that you keep all year round? Oh, I can put my hand on my heart and say that I'm in probably almost the worst shape I've been in my entire life right now, Ricky. I'd probably realistically be about 14% body fat right now. And I used to think that I was fat above 11%. And the range I like to sit in was 10 to 11%. Now, the reason for that is because I just let things go last year and introduced alcohol back again. Richard is probably the leanest of all of us, and I think his age and the fact that he's got no children plays a big role in that. But he's also extremely disciplined, and mostly around alcohol. Richard really doesn't drink a lot of alcohol, and he's also extremely disciplined with his training and diet. And I'd say you sit around 8 to 10%, wouldn't you,
Yeah, I'd probably say
all
that
year
range.
round?
Like, I remember a few years ago, I had a few consistent DEXs year in, year out, and I would sit between low 8%. I'd never really. I think I got even 7% one year when I measured myself. But these days I've put on a little bit of muscle, and I'd assume that I've probably increased the fat a little bit as well at the same time because I went from like 85 to now, or 83 to like 90 kilos. But yeah, I reckon I'd probably still sit around that 8 to 10% body fat all year round
Yep.
without much
Yep.
consideration to calories in my diet because yeah, for the reasons that we're going to go into later. But yeah,
Yep. Yeah, I've been working to drop a bit. I would be somewhere between the 12 and 14%. I haven't had a DEXA in a while, and I will get back to that 10 to 11%. I reckon in probably another month or two. I'm doing it quite sustainably with a combination of diet intervention and cardio and strength training. And I think that for a male, I like to say 10 to 14% is really, really nice. Anything below 14%, you really have very little room to drink alcohol, I believe, because you got to get enough dietary protein. And then the other calories need to come, like you just have enough calories to eat enough healthy fats, healthy carbs, and there's just very little room for alcohol in there. You can afford to drink a few times a year at social events, and that's it. So if you want to get sub 14% body fat and maintain it, you can't have addictions at all. You know, sugar addictions, alcohol addictions. I find any sort of drug addictions out because you'll generally come down at some point and just binge on crap. For females, I'd like to say, 18 to 24 to 26% is really athletic. Many women below 20%, you'll start to mess with menstrual cycles and things like that. So it's sort of genetics. Like I've had girlfriends that have been able to sustain 16 to 18% body fat and still, have a healthy menstrual cycle. But that really depends on the individual, genetics. And so, yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope that helps. Richard, you rock, Mr. Lean. Yeah, mate, he's hard to beat. I tell you what. Hi from Brazil. Hello, Natalia. Unflush, blah blah blah. Unflushable is train. Absolutely. All right, guys, we're gonna leave it there. We'll see you next week. Make sure you like, subscribe, get over to the Movement Mastermind. If you want to get registered for the 5-day flexibility challenge and work with us, fully complimentary for free. You need to do so today, probably, maybe over the weekend. Rad can get you in there. You'll be working with Rad, but it'll be a whole heap of fun. We'll see you over there. Take care.
You guys.